I believe that everyone is going to be interested in the topic I'd like to share with you today, and that's the quest for professionals in our field to be more productive and effective. I've long wondered how the most professional and productive tea scholars manage to fit it all in. So in today's presentation, I'm going to share with you some things that I've learned about productivity and efficiency. And I'd also like to have a number of questions for you to participate in, either by opening your mic and answering the questions or by typing something in the chat. So let's get started. Why this topic? Well, I think it doesn't really matter where you are in the field, where you work. I think everyone, especially those people here today, what is it, 9:30 in the morning for you on, is it Saturday for you or Sunday? Well, it's still the weekend, right? So 9:30 in the morning for you, 9:30 in the evening for me. People who are doing these kinds of things at these hours are interested in being more professional, more professionally developed, and more productive. So I think everyone is looking for ways that they can be more productive on the job and in life. So the purpose of what we're going to be doing tonight or today for you is I'd like to share a little bit of recent research that I and others have done on the personal productivity of TESOLers. I'd also like to share with you what are the recognized characteristics of highly productive people, as well as sharing some strategies that I think might help you to be more personally and professionally productive. So let's get started. The first thing I'd like to talk about is how we define productivity. And if we were there together with a little more time, I might ask you how you define productivity in general. I'm going to hold off, however, and ask for you to define a productive day here in a minute. So how do we define productivity? I think a question to first ask ourselves is, can it really be measured? And if so, how? Is it, for example, the ability to get things done, to cross things off of our to-do? Does it refer to the level of discipline we have, personally and professionally? Is it how fast or how slow we get things done? And does it have any relationship to being committed or to commitment? So all of those kinds of questions, I think we need to either have a consensus from the literature, which to my knowledge, there isn't really one, or we have to come up with our own definition of productivity. Now, for me, what characterizes a productive day? For me, a productive day is when the following criteria are met. I leave work and I have the impression that I've done my job well. So I have that, that feeling. I also have an email inbox with under 100 messages in it. Now, this is kind of my wish list, because I don't think in the last 5, even 10 years that I've had less than 300 messages, but we can always hope, and strive to do that. And by messages, I mean ones that are, active that we need to respond to. It's one thing to just shove things in folders to get them out of your inbox, but to actually really have done something with them is quite another. Another thing that characterizes a productive day for me is when I've either gone to the gym or gotten some exercise, like getting my 10,000 steps in. Also having a bit of enjoyment. For me, enjoyment is going to come right after I finish with you all today. I'm going to choose an episode of a television series to watch to congratulate myself for a job well done. And finally, for me, I am very big into personal and professional strategic planning. And as I enter into the last 2 months of my strategic plan for 2021, a productive day for me is when I've gotten the time or taken the time to work on one of the priorities that I've set forward for myself from my strategic plan. So I'd like to open it up to a couple of you and think about what characterizes a productive day for you. Could I have a volunteer? Just, you don't have to give 5 or 6 bullet points, just one thing that you characterize as something you've done when the day has been productive. I don't want to call on you, so I'm going to wait for you to volunteer.
A productive day for me begins when I wake up at 5 o'clock. That's my regular wake up time. I accomplish some housework before I leave for work. I go to work, I teach my classes, and I also aim for 10,000 steps a day.
Great. Okay, we have a few things there in common. And we'll talk, Pamela, later on about the importance of using our mornings for productivity. Anyone else like to share?
I think we have a few answers in the chat box as well.
Oh, sorry. It might be a little too late for me to be reading the small print of the chat. Oh, no, it's okay. Knock down everything on my to-do list. Yeah, have some me time. I like that. Again, the to-do list might be something that is really important for BC Tealers, I guess. Read an article related to my job. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, great. So for those of you who did not participate, think about this at some point during the conference, because if you don't really know how you define productivity, you're not really probably going to increase yours. All right, now, let's look at some research on productivity. Well, the most impressive study in my view is the one that was done by Microsoft some years back. And the big thing that was revealed here is that we are only productive 3 days a week. Think about it. When you have a productive day, further research goes on to state that when you have a really productive day and you think, oh, if only tomorrow will be so productive, more often than not, you don't have 2 productive days in a row because your body kind of needs some time to recuperate from being so productive. So this research is based on a 45-hour week where we only have 17 productive hours. So very shocking, I feel. Another bit of research shows that the more happy you are, the more productive you are. So it goes without saying that you need to do a few things to keep yourself happy. A further research result is that more deliberate or focused time spent on a task is better than the amount of time. So 45 focus minutes on a task is better than 3 hours of unfocused or not so focused time. So it's not really the number of hours you spend on something, it's the amount of focus time. And I think this next one, no teacher doesn't know this. Our brains fear big projects. We see that in our students all the time, where they dither around, not wanting to start a project because it seems too big. But helping them, break the boulders into pebbles is one kind of way to get over that first big step of starting on a project. And the biggest, of course, wall to success is oftentimes getting started on a project. Okay, let's look. I see that there are some people in the waiting room. If we could let them in.
They're experiencing some tech difficulties. We're dealing with that.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's move on to some general characteristics of successful people, because I feel successful people are, of course, productive. Well, a successful person has a dream, but they also have a plan to put that dream into place. They also have specific knowledge or training in something, and they have the willingness to work hard. Another important characteristic is that they don't take no for an answer. If something goes wrong, or if they have a roadblock to a project, they go at it a different way. And this is a characteristic that is mentioned several times in the literature. They are also self-reliant. They don't need lots of people to help them. They can depend on themselves. So let's do another activity, which I'd like to hear from a couple of people. The one I just chose out of the characteristics of successful people is self-reliance, because being self-reliant is crucial to success and, of course, thereby productivity. So think about in what areas you are not self-reliant. It's easy to talk about our strengths, but think about something that you wish you were more self-reliant in. And then think about what steps can you take to become more self-reliant in this area. Let me share with you an example. The older I get, the less I want to drive to places that I don't know where they're located. In Dubai, we've got a number of big events going on, namely Expo 2020, the Global Village, and traffic is crazy. So I would prefer not to drive somewhere and have to rely on GPS to get me somewhere, but not be able to tell where I'm going. So what I have done is decided to take taxis. If I feel stressed out about going somewhere, I take a taxi to get there to relieve my stress. So what steps can I take to become more self-reliant in this area? What can I do? How can I get myself to drive to places that I'm unfamiliar with without the stress that goes along with that? Any answers, any recommendations for me?
You can make sure you have plenty of time to, in order to arrive, so you don't have to feel the stress.
Okay, time management. Okay, thank you, Pamela. Anyone else? Well, my students always say, Miss, use Google Maps. And then I say, my dear students, I don't like to look at my phone to see where I'm at on the map while I'm driving. So they say, turn on the, the person who talks to you, etc. So that's something I'm going to try to work on. Okay. Now, anybody here in the audience who has something that they feel they lack self-reliance in and wants to share? Is it too early in the morning for sharing? You're down your way? Oh, financial decisions, computer skills, Uber. Okay. All right, good. Okay, lots of different things. Okay, thank you, Basma. I'll definitely try the, yes, Lizzie, how the voice function. Perfect. Okay. All right, let's move on to things that we need to avoid. Well, I think the first one, energy vampires, is pretty much self-explanatory. An energy vampire typically is a person, unfortunately, but it's a person who is oftentimes difficult, but they're in your life, so you have to deal with them, and they're the type of people who kind of suck the energy right out of you. Okay, they're difficult to deal with, difficult to to spend time with, but they're there and you have to deal with them. So a second thing to avoid is multitasking. In fact, the research shows, many of you probably remember the days when multitasking first was being discussed. And teachers, we said to ourselves, hey, we do that all the time and it works for us. Well, the jury is now in, and multitasking is not recommended. A few years after multitasking came into our lives, at least, it was then found that if you multitask on one heavy brain task and one no-brainer task, that was okay, because you didn't lose focus on the one that required you to think. But now, clearly, if you change tasks more than 10 times per day, this drops your IQ scores by 10 points on average. And it's a 15-point drop for men, whereas only a 5-point drop for women, for women. Now, I don't know if that's because women, by the very nature of us being women, we kind of do more tasks a day anyway. I don't know where that comes from, but clearly multitasking is not working. In fact, multitasking on two heavily brain focused or cognitive activities results in a drop in, success on both of those activities. Other things we need to avoid are distractions in our lives, and distractions more often than not are people. When I see my classes, I see what the distractions are for my students. And it was very, very prominent pre-COVID in the form of devices. I don't know what you do in Canada. Are students allowed to have devices in the classroom, phones, laptops, whatever? Is that, do you forbid that in class, or are students into their phones? Are they distracted by their devices in your classes typically?
I would say most of us are able to allow the students to have their phones with them. And it is true that they are sometimes distracted. I think we try to use it as a learning tool. For example, using their online dictionaries, looking at vocabulary, using their videos for pronunciation so they can see themselves, things like that.
Yeah, it's kind of the old, if you can't beat them, join them technique. We do that a lot more. And I think it's getting a little bit better with online teaching, because you can have students doing something with their phone that is actually part of the classroom. But we, at least in the Gulf, still have, students here, they don't just have one phone, they have often 3 or 4 phones. So it's a real big thing to get them to give up their phones. Meetings as well. One of the silver linings of the pandemic, if there are any, is we no longer have as many meetings, at least in this part of the world. And the meetings we do have are held online, on Zoom usually. So meetings oftentimes, many of which could be just emails as well. Avoiding them will make you more productive. And being available, 24 hours a day on our phones, etc., being switched on, plugged in all the time, is also draining of our productivity. So now I'd like to share with you a study that I did with a colleague named Phil Quirk a couple of years ago. And Phil and I were in the cafeteria talking about a project, and this was pre-COVID, of course. And Phil told me, he said, "Christine, I've always admired how productive you were." And I said, "Phil, thank you. I've often thought the same thing about you," because Phil is very organized, gets a ton of things done, and spends a lot of time driving around from campus to campus in the UAE, going to different colleges, but still is ultra productive. So we decided that let's find out what makes people highly productive. So we did a study, and we defined the people who we wanted to study were those individuals that we knew who seemed to fit it all in, meaning they were great at their jobs, but they also did everything else, and they did it with great aplomb. They engaged in personal and professional activities outside the job, like doing research, going to conferences, presenting, organizing events, doing volunteer work, publishing, etc. So we had a proportive sample, and our goal was to discover our sample's secrets of success in their individual productivity. So let me share with you a little bit of information about that. We thought that there would be a number of different variables that might come into play, and we wanted to see whether there was a difference in gender, were males or females more productive? Were you more productive, at 30, 40, 50 or older? We wanted to see whether the highest degree held had anything to do with productivity, whether being married or single had an impact, and whether our years of teaching experience had anything to do with productivity. So our proportive sampling was almost 50-50. So we had a 53% of our sample was male, and the rest were female. Now, the age range of the people that participated in our survey was between 40 years of age to 68. However, the mean age was 53 years old. Now, highest degree held, 87% were either had doctoral degrees and the rest had master's degrees. Surprisingly, 90% of our sample were married with only 10% single. And the mean years of teaching experience in our sample was 28 years. So with those demographics in mind, the first question on our survey was, how do you define a productive day? Well, the top answer by almost all of the samples said to get done what I plan to do, to tick those things off of my to-do list. So the more I get done, or the more I get done about what I plan to get done, the more my day was productive. Other activities that people in our sample put forward were to engage in some sort of writing, either academically or creatively, to do something with a family. And I really like this next one, to limit time and energy on tasks that I find unproductive. And we had a lot in like 5th place, to plan for the future, go to the gym, engage in work that's related to one key institutional role. Now, if I ask you to think about how you would answer this question, now these were all pre-pandemic responses. How would you, if you were to answer this question, would your answers be any different from the ones that are showcased on this slide? Or would you have some other, during pandemic or post-pandemic response? Can I hear from a couple of people? For me, basically, now during some of the pandemic, to get done what I planned to do would not have been my first response. It would have been to get through the day. Because when we were sent home, and I work at a technology college, so we already had flipped learning to a certain extent. So we had some online learning going on, and we already knew the platform we were using. But literally, I was sent home. I'm sitting in the same office that I'm right here with you now, and literally I haven't felt like a novice in many, many years, but I felt in those days like a rank amateur, like I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to write anything on a slide. So it took my student to say, Miss, all you have to do is blah, blah, blah. So the students were teaching me, which was a good thing in the end, but I would not have defined a productive day like the number of things I get done, because just getting through the day was achievement enough in those days. All right, question 2 was, how do you prioritize those additional professional goals? How do you do them? Well, most people said, or the highest response was, it's prioritized based on whether it is enjoyable or not. Others were much more organized, whether it's using a to-do list with set deadlines, whether it's part of my job or not, whether it's clearly set priority, etc. So those were the most common responses to that question. Here's the good one. How do you create time for extra responsibilities over and above your job? Well, one of the things we discovered in this question was there was no real secret. In fact, many of the people in this survey found extra time to do these extra things over and above their job because they were using techniques that aren't necessarily recommended in the productivity literature. For example, using your weekends. Research shows that you shouldn't be using your weekends for extra work, because you need to use your weekends to rejuvenate, to revive, re-energize, etc. So using weekends, another one, using time management, of course, that will help. Anything, sleeping less, another really bad, at least according to the literature. But it's one activity that I do. I have the 4:30 a.m. Routine, and not like yours, Pamela, which sounds healthy, but anytime I get a an activity that there's definitely not enough time for in my day, I pull 2 4:30 in the morning get-ups and use, 2.5 hours each day to get whatever it is I need to get done, and not very healthy in the long term. Using summer and vacation times, multitasking, and limiting socializing are all negative strategies, at least in the literature. So not very many secrets of success there, but things that we probably shouldn't be doing to maximize our time. How do you create a balance? Well, the most common answer was meet family commitments and put family first. And I think that is really a big thing to do, especially in addition to productivity, but in the happiness literature as well. That's number one on being happy, is to put the family first. Again, keep weekends free. Say no, I only wish I could. Slow down, relax, sleep. So some good responses for that particular question on balance. The fifth question, and I believe the final question, was what advice do you have for those who want to get more involved and be more productive? What should you tell them? Well, the most common response was find something that matters to you and do it. To do an extra task, it's not a difficult thing. What you're doing is enjoyable. So I think probably that's kind of the best advice you can give anyone. It's not really a good thing to be spending extra time better spent with family on something you don't find enjoyable. So let's see what the research says about the most productive people. Well, and this is from the general literature. The most productive people know what is important to them, and what inspires them. That's of critical importance. And they also plan their day, and most of them do so the night before. They also know what their priorities are and protect them. They have good time management strategies, and they equip themselves with the right tools. What do you think that means, the right tools? What does that mean? What do you think are the right tools for you to be successful? When I was originally doing this presentation, I read a lot of literature, and I was really thinking about what are the right tools that I need to be successful. And that was an expensive year for me, because I did a self-evaluation, and I had a really old phone, and it was beginning to mess with me a little bit. I had a really old phone. I had a really old laptop, and my car was 16 years old and breaking down all the time. So I said to myself, how are you going to be successful and productive if you keep waiting for your car to break down on the road to work? So that year, it was real expensive. I bought a new car, a new laptop, and a new phone to provide myself with the right tools that I thought I would need to be successful. The most productive people also use the technology they have efficiently and effectively. And they use laser-like focus as a major tool. So laser-like focus and concentration is very important. Now, another silver lining for the pandemic for me is that when I was sent home to work from home, I live alone. Now that was bad in a way, but it was also a time where I could kind of direct my own time myself. I self-directed my time, whereas when I'm at work, I'm other directed. So I don't have concentration time at work unless I go hide in a classroom, because people often come to hijack my time, to get me to do something for one of their priorities. So I found that once I got used to the platform that I was teaching from and felt comfortable that I knew what I was doing in my classes, a silver lining was that I was really productive in certain areas like academic writing, etc. Now, the most productive people are also well organized. So what does that mean? Well, Stack, who wrote a really interesting book on organizational skills, says that you can call yourself organized if you can find something that you need within 30 seconds or less. So if you know that there's a piece of paper that you need or a document on your laptop, if you can find it quickly, 30 seconds or less, then you can call yourself well organized. I also think that the most productive and organized people are interested in self-improvement and lifelong learning. That's something that I think is associated with professional development, with happiness research, with all kinds of positive psychology as well. The most productive people are mindful in that they live in the now. They also have systems currently in place to automate processes that they need to go through. They are disciplined, they hold themselves accountable. Also, they work on their own agenda. No one else or no other thing sets their day for them, they set their day. And they are routine oriented. You're probably seeing words on this slide like to automate processes, routine oriented, etc. And sure enough, it's really important to have a routine that you use to make yourself productive. Now, I know that there's a slide about this, but let's take some of your routine or your automated processes now. Can you give me some examples of a process that you have in place that makes you more productive? Well, some quiet people. Oh no, I have exercise when I wake up. Okay, that's a good one. For me, I'll tell you about one of mine. I'm also big in the happiness literature. And one of the things that you can do to make yourself happier is surround yourself with pleasant smells or pleasant aromas. So I have, as soon as I get up, this elaborate incense burning routine that I have now gotten down to 5 minutes, where I light incense in all the rooms of my house so that when I get ready for work, I do so in a pleasant smelling environment. So that's one of the processes I've automated for my own life. Time management is critically important. So taking control of your time is important. The most important research finding with regard to time management is how you use your mornings. In fact, one of the best books that I've ever read on this topic is entitled "What the Most Productive People Do Before Breakfast." So the most productive people from the
and he told me everything. That before the
Is that a question for me, or is that a person with their mic on?
It was a person with a mic on, sorry.
Okay, all right. So the most productive people get up early. However, they have to have slept anywhere between 6.5 to 7.5 hours per night, because those who get within this range of sleep per night are the happiest, most productive, and they live the longest. It is recommended that you start your day with a refueling activity, such as having breakfast, getting some exercise in, meditation, yoga, reading the newspaper, whatever it is you do to start your day. Also, finishing one task right away is a good way to set the tone for the rest of your day. I've also seen literature that an action as simple as making your bed in the morning is said to start your day off on the right foot, basically. So tackling challenging tasks when your brain is fresh, i.e. hopefully in the morning, is a recommended strategy for increased productivity. Taking control of the rest of your time is also very important. One of the strategies is to optimize time pockets that you have with things that are called floating tasks. Now, a floating task is something that you bring with you that you can get done anytime, any place, where you find yourself with like an hour to kill or 2 hours. Now, I'm not recommending you do things while you're in traffic, although listening to an audiobook is not such a bad idea in those kinds of cases. but you're in, you're in a doctor's appointment, you're waiting. We teachers, we always, well, back in the day when students took tests on paper, they never do in our context now, we could pull out a bunch of papers to start marking in that time pocket. But having things to do when you have a time pocket will lead to increased productivity. Maximizing downtime is also well received. Now, many of you might ask, I notice you're all BC Teal, you look like a very active affiliate. Many people, when they're asked to come forward to do, let's say, a BC Teal activity or service, they often say, well, I really shouldn't take on anything more because, I might make mistakes in other things in my life. Well, research shows that external commitments are highly correlated with high achievement. And I can speak to this because all of my life, I have been involved in an affiliate, even as president of the TESOL International Association. You don't just jump into a big role like that, you do it gradually. And I personally feel that the more you do of activities like this, the more you're able to do. So by pushing yourself, by doing something that's oftentimes difficult at first, you do get better at it. So don't feel guilty about taking on external commitments over and above your job, because they're highly correlated with high achievement in other parts of life. Now, here's an interesting strategy that I found in the literature about to-do lists. Now, I'm sure that everyone in the audience, it's morning time, you all probably have your to-do list written down. Maybe some of you are ticking things off as we speak. Think about cutting your to-do list in half, and an interesting strategy, include what you won't do as well. So for me, this is exam time for my students, and I don't know what it is, but when we're online, here students never open their cameras, and they're very hesitant to, let's say, engage, say something in class. But the one thing they do ask is, over and over again, they ask about when their test deadlines are. So the other day, I was 12 minutes into my class and I had already answered the question, when is the project due, 5 or 6 times. And I was trying to start my class. And then, of course, once I'd started, another student piped in, when is the deadline for the project? And I basically said, I'm going to email you after class with this information. And if any of you ask me this question again, I am going to refer you to that email. So please don't delete it. So I decided that I'm not going to be pulled into wasting any more class time for students who don't want to pay attention when they want the information. So I decided I wasn't going to be pulled into that kind of behavior anymore. Another strategy, and I'm sure you've heard this one many times, is take more breaks. We're more productive, believe it or not, when we take more breaks. And the recommended time block to work in is anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes, with then taking a short break. There's other research on this as well. Don't work for longer than 25 minutes or whatever. The point, though, is not the amount of time you should work and take a break. The point is that you should take more breaks. Take care of yourself, a very important consideration. In fact, research shows that people take better care of their cars than they do themselves. So remember to eat right, get enough sleep, get some exercise, and maybe the most important here is learn to manage stress, especially during these times. We talked a little bit about creating systems or routines before, and I told you about my system or routine about incense burning, with a view to making my house smell good so that I started the morning with a more happier vibe going on. So what is one system or routine you have in place that you feel makes you more efficient? Now okay. Cindy, that's an interesting thing. Write things on your to-do list just to cross them off. I oftentimes see that I've done something, but it's not on my to-do list. So sometimes I write it in, then I tick it off since I've already done it. But yes, I think that is a common thing for list crossers. Any other routines you have? Oh, good, good, Linda, good. Get everything packed up and at the door before bed. Yes, great. Okay, good idea. Tidying up your desk. Yes, good. How can you do that, Cindy? Only check email at specific times. I know email is a time drain as well. And now I found that with COVID, what became an even bigger time drain is that in order to ensure communication was happening between my students and I decided that they could contact me through text, through WhatsApp, through voice notes, and it became to be too much. So that's something that didn't really work so well, but the good intention was there. Okay. Now, another strategy for improvement is to establish a network of outside collaborators or tribes, or maybe what you would call a community of practice. So who are your tribes and how do these people further your thinking? Who have you been working with? Of course, the BC Teal people, that is definitely a community of practice or a tribe. Any other groups that have helped you make it through the pandemic? For me, it's been Toastmasters. Another silver lining for me is that I had stopped Toastmasters for a couple of years, but then I got back into Toastmasters because of the pandemic. Anyone else? Any other tribes or communities of practices? Your thank you, Naziha. TESOL Gulf Toastmasters. Yes, good. The campus. Okay, I'm seeing lots of associations. Okay, sorry to hear that, Sarvi, but you can always find, you know, I know it's a big time difference if you're based in BC, but join our Toastmaster Club in the Gulf or TESOL Gulf. We're all a bunch of overachievers. So think about communities of practice where you can excel or where you can have social time. I joined a quiz group from teachers from a trivia quiz group from teachers from around the world. And that was kind of interesting as well and fun and kept me home and busy. Let's move on to the next set of strategies. Stop saying yes to everything. If you say yes to everything, according to the research, you end what is called your elite productivity, all right? Which means if you really want to be known for something, you have to have elite productivity in that area. And this would also, I think, apply to academic. People who, you know, who want to focus, particularly those in doctoral programs, should probably focus on one academic theme and then have a couple of others, rather than do one study in like 10 different areas. That's not elite productivity. So here's an interesting thing to think about. What is one thing in your life that you wish you would have said no to? Anybody want to share? One thing in your life you wish you would have said no to. Or one thing in your life that you wish you could say no to. For me, it's invigilation, or whatever it is you call it, proctoring. For me, this is the worst thing about teaching. The only good thing about it, in my institution, we can't even invigilate or proctor our own tests. So I'm always called into Calculus 2 or aviation systems, things I know nothing about, so I can't even be useful answering a question. The only thing I can do other than get my steps in is bring students pencils and water. And now I can't even do that with, you know, the social distancing. So if there was one thing I could not do in teaching, it would be that. Anybody else? What's one thing you wish you could say no to in the job? or in life. For me, it's vacuuming. Vacuuming and ironing is at home. That's what I wish I could have.
No to cooking.
Oh, no to cooking. Okay.
I'm a bad cook.
Hello,
I hate cooking too, but I love eating. So, you know, what can you do?
I love eating.
Yeah. Another good thing about the pandemic, I discovered what's called Deliveroo, just having things delivered to my house. So now I don't even have to go grocery shopping. Everything can be brought to my house. And it's good because you put people who don't have jobs to work as delivery people. So that's interesting. Rewarding yourself for a job well done is a good strategy, so long as it's not always doing, you know, eating like a big pizza or, you know, a tub of ice cream. So what is your usual reward mechanism? What do you do for yourself when you've crossed a big thing off your list and you say, hey, that's, you know, a job well done for myself? What do you usually do for yourself?
I give myself some me time.
Me time, okay. Anybody do any retail therapy? I hear that it is Black Friday. No, it's Saturday now. It was Black Friday yesterday.
oh, Russian person.
Yeah, go shopping online, Amazon.
Okay, good, good. So rewarding yourself for a job well done is a good thing to do, provided it's not engaging in, you know, unhealthy things. Finally, drafting a personal strategic plan has worked for me. According to Stack, every minute you spend in planning is set to save you 20 minutes of work or effort. And I'm a huge proponent of a personal strategic plan. I've been doing a PCP since 2008. And I am certain that if I had not started this process, I would not have achieved the goals that I've achieved throughout the past, I don't know, 15 or so years. So I'm really a big proponent of that. But that's the topic for another session if you're interested in that kind of thing. And remember, right now we're coming up on the beginning of a new year, not so an academic year, but a new year. So it's the perfect time to start thinking about your personal strategic plan and goal setting. So there you have it, my thoughts on productivity and strategies to be more successful and more productive and more efficient. I think we've got some time for questions. Let me see where we are. Yeah, we do. Do we have any questions? I hope you've all had your coffee and are ready to turn your mics on. If you'd like a copy of this presentation, my email's there. Just send me an email. I'm happy to share.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Actually, I couldn't recognize what's the difference between this time packing and multitasking. How should I understand if I am multitasking or I am efficiently using my time, like listening to audiobooks while driving? I couldn't actually see the point. Thank you.
Well, okay, multitasking, quite simply, is when you do more than one task at the same time. But there are different kinds of tasks that require different kinds of cognitive attention. So at first, when multitasking came out, it was all the rage. Oh yeah, we have to multitask. But then the research showed that, I believe the early research was that when we multitask on two cognitive tasks, meaning brain tasks, the level of success with each of those tasks is reduced because we're doing multitasking. So then it was said, well, if you do one cognitively challenging task, and then you do something that isn't, like a no-brainer, kind of like listening to an audiobook, then it was a little bit better. And sure enough, it was. But now the research is clear that when we engage with more than one thing at the same time, the level of the standard that we do is down in both tasks. So for me, I'm a big audiobook person, and I spend a lot of time in the car. So oftentimes I'll listen to an audio book in the morning on my way to work, but I'll listen to music when I come home. However, you know, probably the negative or the non-multitasking purist would say, you know, maybe that's not a good idea to do that. But, you know, I
So
think
I want to just check if I understood correctly. It's like tasks that interfere with each other. We should focus on one of them, but tasks like driving and listening to something, there is no interference. So it is not multitasking. It's using our time efficiently, something like that.
well, you know, I wouldn't say that because I don't know how your drive is.
No,
For
I'm
me,
just bringing an example. Actually,
yeah,
I don't
but
drive.
I think if you go to work and you're kind of like on autopilot, then that's okay. Sometimes I'll be into a book and then I'll arrive at work and I can't remember the drive to work. And I think, uh-oh, that's not good because I need to be paying attention. First and foremost, I need to be protecting myself, but also, you know,
Okay.
not putting others in danger. So I think, you know, and I think also for audiobooks, not listening for 10 or 15 minutes is okay. But I know I kind of lose the plot after 15 minutes. I can read
Yeah.
for 3 hours a book, but I can only listen to about 15 minutes of it at a time.
Me too. Great. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah.
Now it's clear. Completely
Thanks so
clear.
much. I see
Thank you.
some interesting stuff in the chat. Let me respond to it. Okay, hang on. What resources can you recommend? Well, I can recommend an article that I wrote on, and also a handbook on doing a strategic plan if you're interested. So you need to email me and ask specifically for that, okay? I have a new book on professionalism and I wrote the chapter on doing a personal strategic plan, as well as on productivity. So if you want more information, I'm happy to provide it by email. And let's see what else is. Okay, if we are productive just for 3 days a week, it means we don't have to be so hard on ourselves. Yes, definitely. I think so too. Definitely. Okay, yeah, good point about you can't let's see, you can't read something and then listen to something else. Yeah, but you know, there are a lot of millennials who will say, I can't do anything unless there's music playing. I know I can't, you know, I can't do anything productive. I have to read when there's quiet, but there are others that say, I swear by that. Anything else? Any other questions?
Christine, I was going to ask about the music
Yeah.
because I'm wondering if perhaps the music is more a way of, it's like white noise, it blocks out the background.
Could be.
That I was just wondering about it.
Yep, it could be. I mean, I like there to be noise in my house, and I often have music going on. I even have not stereo equipment, but in the bathroom. So that might be weird, but you know, different kinds of things. But when I read or when I do like writing, academic writing, I can't have extraneous noise. I have to have total focus. Yes, and of course, Mercedes, it also depends on what music I'm listening to. Yep. Would you please say the name of that inspiring book? Well, it's What the Most Productive People Do Before Breakfast. And I think the name of the author is Laura Vanderkamp. She does a lot of books on time management, really interesting ones. Another one I want to recommend is The Life Audit. This is my favorite book. And it is where, if you're interested in being more organized, especially, gosh, what's the name of the author? Carolyn Rickton, I think her name is. if you're interested in looking at various aspects of your life, not just your professional life. You know, there are chapters in her book which have exercises you do. Like I remember one of the activities in this book was your towels, okay? Where you take a look at, you audit your towels, and you do things like you get rid of the ones that are too old, you repurpose others, etc. So it's not just about like your research or your teaching, things that you would think you would need to audit, but it's you audit your medical issues, your health, basically. And this is a book that I've had for a number of years, but I've actually done the audit 3 times because I find it so useful. And she has a really good website as well, which you can get some free activities on as well. So check her website, The Life Audit, first, and if you think it might be useful. I have this book on all of my devices on, paperback as well. So it's one that I always go back to. But I'm sure there are all kinds of other great books out there on this topic.
I don't have a question, but since we've got you here and Cindy as well, and a lot of our BCTlers, I would like to extend an invitation for you to come back and tell us a little bit more about the strategic planning. I think it's the time of the year for that, definitely, and it's something that a lot of us could make very good use of.
Sure. Hit me up in January. That's the perfect time for it all. Okay, the perfect time.
We sure will.
All right. Any other questions? It doesn't have to be about productivity or anything. Thanks, everyone, for the kind words. Thank you.
Well,
Christine,
if there are no other, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering what you most enjoy about where you're living right now.
Well, it's still in the high 80s. And last Friday, I spent all day in the Raffles pool, which is a nice chilled pool. We're still chilling the pools. Okay. Probably in January, we'll start heating them up. So that's what I enjoy the most. However, it is very hot here, and now we have Expo 2020, which is a really amazing event. And now you can really only go in the evening because it's too hot really to spend too much time there. But that's my thing. But this part of the world is lovely. Hope you can all come for at least a visit or a conference when things get back on track. Are you guys doing anything face-to-face with BCTO?
The plan right now is to have our spring conference as an online conference, but we're hoping, fingers crossed, that we'll be able to organize some live events in the regions and do basically watch party, but things are still pretty unsure here.
Okay. Well, we're down to under 100 cases a day. So, just when you think you're okay, I don't want, we're still wearing, it's still, you get a major fine if you don't have a mask on, despite all that. So I feel, relatively safe here. I'm going to be making a trip to see family to the US in about 3 weeks' time. So I don't know really what to expect for that, but I don't know. I'm not for sure how Canada is with regard to cases. You seem to have closed down for most of the time. So I hope everything is pretty good there, COVID-wise, I mean.
It's getting better. Our case counts are still way higher than we would like them to be, but it's clearing up. Things are getting kind of back to normal.
Are you still teaching online, or have students come back into the classroom?
I'm not teaching right now, but Pamela would know.
Mm.
Most
Pamela, are you-
campuses are now open. A lot of students are back on the campuses, but I think during the last few days, everybody is looking into the possibility of probably another lockdown if this new variant gets serious.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I teach hybrid now. Some of my classes are face-to-face, but with social distancing and reduced levels of students, and some are completely online. But the word is that we're coming back full-time, face-to-face next semester. So I don't know how that's going to work, because as much as I love teaching, when we came back to campus, you know, when we had, what was it? When we had 3 months at home online, working from home, then we had summer. It was really hard to come back. Maybe it's my age, I don't know, but it was really hard to come back with so many people around. You know, you get used to kind of being on your own. So
Kind of like business on top, comfy on the bottom. It seems to be working for a lot of people.
exactly, yeah, exactly. Well, whatever happens, I wish you all the best, and I wish you a great day, okay? And thanks for inviting me. Hope to see you again in January.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We all
Okay,
enjoyed
thank
it
you.
and we look forward to meeting you again. Thank you very much to all the people who joined this wonderful presentation. I hope you all have your notebooks full of ideas to think about. We will hopefully reconvene with Dr. Coombe sometime in January, but between now and then, please stay tuned for more BCTL events. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone, and stay blessed. Goodbye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye now.
Goodbye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Dr.
Goodbye.
Coombe. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.